Albany, can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. All right, then we are ready to get started. And just for those joining the Zoom, if you could mute yourselves and turn your cameras off unless you're a commission member, we'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Ready? Are we
We are
recording?
ready. We are.
All right. Good morning and welcome to the final New York State Commission on Forensic Science meeting of 2024. Today we have sites both in New York City and Albany. I would like to welcome our new commission member, Lieutenant Colonel Nicholas Barbary. Lieutenant Colonel Banbury, sorry. I left my reading glasses somewhere. Is the Assistant Deputy Superintendent, Administration of the New York State Police, and joins the commission as the representative of a law enforcement agency.
Thank you very much. Very excited to be part of the commission.
Thank you. At this time, I will take attendance to establish a quorum, and also Commission Member Murphy is joining us remotely today due to extenuating circumstances, so we'll note that for the record. Please respond present when I call on you. Lieutenant Colonel Banbury.
Present.
Mr. Castro.
Present.
Ms. Goldwaite.
Present.
Ms. Rao.
Present.
Dr. Bufalino.
Present.
Mr. Epstein.
Present.
Dr. Marciano.
Present.
Ms. Schmitz.
Present.
Dr. Chitlin.
Present.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Present.
Ms. Murphy.
Present via Zoom.
Dr. Wiley.
Present.
Thank you, and including myself, we have established a quorum. All right. Everyone has received the agenda for today's meeting. Is there any discussion regarding the agenda? All right. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion from Mr. Fitzpatrick. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. You have also received a draft of the minutes from the September 27th, 2024 meeting. Are there any questions or comments? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Any abstentions?
That should be an extension. I wasn't at the last meeting.
Okay, one abstention. The motion carries.
I wasn't at the last meeting, but I watched the video, so.
So you're voting?
Yeah.
All right.
Everybody looked great.
The next item on the agenda is a vote to go into executive session. I'm going to turn it over to Shelley.
Okay. Sorry. At this point, we're going to put all of our people in Zoom into the waiting room, and you'll be there until we are coming out of executive session. Just another reminder, if everyone could avoid the chat function today on Zoom, please don't type anything. It's not necessary. So the first couple of housekeeping things again. So is there, yes.
I think we need to take a vote to go into executive session.
Yep, but first we need a motion.
State the reason? Okay.
So,
She's getting
I
there.
was gonna get there.
All right. Sorry.
Housekeeping we didn't get to.
Open the gun.
Good morning, Colleen. At this point, is there a motion to go into executive session to discuss matters relating to a current investigation or matters that may lead to the appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, or suspension of a particular person?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, and please say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Anyone opposed?
Yes.
Yes.
2 nays. Aaron as well? Okay. And any abstentions? All right, we do have,
Yep.
10-4. So we have approved the motion, and at this point, like I said, those of you on Zoom will be placed into the waiting room. And we'll let you know when we're back. Good.
All right, we are back in open session. The working group will continue its work. Come back to us at our next meeting. Ms. Palmer, that's you. Would you please walk us through the accreditation and laboratory update section of the meeting materials?
So no action was taken, and I appreciate that update. And we do have quite a few items here for informational purposes, and there are 3 votes today for accreditation renewals in New York State. First laboratory on the agenda is the Erie County Medical Examiner's Office of Forensic Toxicology. They have notified ANAB and the commission that Caitlin Johnson will be the interim chief county toxicologist while Melissa Bowler is on an extended leave. Are there any questions for the lab? Ms. Johnson is available, but if we don't have any, we'll move right on. Okay. Up next, the Monroe County Office of the Medical Examiner Forensic Toxicology Laboratory has notified ANAB and the commission that at the beginning of on November 18th, Anna Ovale has been named the Assistant Chief Toxicologist. Laboratory management is available for questions, if anyone has any. Okay. Nassau County Office of the Medical Examiner's Division of Forensic Services. In October, ANAB conducted a surveillance assessment activity. There were no findings, and ANAB has issued a continuation of accreditation based on these results. Any questions? We do have Pat here. All right. New York City OCME Department of Forensic Biology. In October, ANAB conducted a surveillance document review, and there were no findings. The lab has also received their final documents from ANAB this week, and they are in your late documents. If there's any questions for the laboratory regarding this activity? Okay. Yes.
Erin has her hand up.
Yes, Erin.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I'm not trying to jump ahead to the item that's on the later agenda, but it was the contamination event part of, I realize it was just a surveillance review, but was ANAB aware that they were in the midst of investigating a major contamination event? And if so, was that part of the review?
Sure, we do have lab here to talk about that.
They only looked at the management system.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hi, I'm Kira McKay. I'm the Quality Assurance Manager in the Department of Forensic Biology. So yes, ANAB is aware of the contamination issue. We have had disclosed to them at the same time that it was disclosed to DCJS. So yes, during the surveillance visit, there was opportunity to update them on the investigation and the process that we're going through to investigate.
Do they have any, I don't know, reactions? Did they do their own independent, checking of all that, or were they just mainly getting a status update from you?
Usually it's part of the accreditation. Well, being an accredited laboratory, we have to follow the procedures to, investigate our own issues and then make sure we're following the standards and using our own system to investigate issues that happen within the laboratory. So that's what we've been doing, and that's what we were updating them on. I don't believe they had any feedback besides, recognizing the amount of work that we're doing, and just that, of course, we'll update them as the process proceeds.
And just so I'm understanding right, did they were because I know in the little table where they're like the stuff that's unassessed versus assessed were the documents or the things that they were reviewing, did it specifically include that process, or was it just kind of a side thing like, oh, and by the way, we're still doing this process?
Trying to remember. I mean, yes, the nonconformity process and the corrective action process and we had to show evidence that we followed those processes were part of what was evaluated. They did, any disclosure we sent to them in the past year, they also reviewed and discussed with us. So I don't remember if that pertained to any particular standard, but it was just, since they were, doing this activity, they took that opportunity to discuss those disclosures with us.
Do you know does ANAB ever just table in a continuation, to return to it, say after this investigation is complete, or is that, I know you're not an ANAB specific person, but do you happen to know if that's a possibility?
We would have to ask ANAB that. I don't.
Not sure. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Up next.
Thank you.
Thank you. The New York City Office of Chief Medical Examiner Forensic Anthropology Unit. In November, ANAB conducted a surveillance assessment activity of that unit as well, and there were no findings. The lab is awaiting their final documents from ANAB. So we will see this again when we get the final documents from them. New York City Police Department Police Laboratory. In October, ANAB conducted surveillance document review, and there were no findings. ANAB has issued the continuation of accreditation documentation based on those results. So all the final documents are there. The laboratory notified ANAB and the commission that the commanding officer of the Firearms Analysis Section, Lieutenant Michael Bopp, has retired, and that the Deputy Director Jeffrey Seckow is the acting commanding officer. And effective November 25th, the laboratory will no longer be performing quantitative analysis of beverage alcohol, and they've notified ANAB, the commission, and their customers. This doesn't require any specific change on their scope, so the scope looks the same, but to make everyone aware that this was happening. So if we have any questions on those three informational items, the laboratory is available virtually. And Erin, I know your hand is up. I don't know if that's up for this one or for the last one. Okay.
Old hand, sorry.
Yep, just wanted to check. Okay. Moving right along, the New York State DCJS Latent Print Laboratory. This is our first vote of the accreditation agenda. In November, the laboratory underwent a full ANAB reassessment activity. There were no findings. ANAB has granted accreditation based on the results of this activity. If there are any questions for the laboratory director, they are available in Albany. Are there any questions regarding this before we move on to a vote?
I have one quick question. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Can we get them to the table, Albany?
They're on their way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning. First, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I don't know if the other room can. Yeah. Hi, thank you. Sorry, I was just wondering what your reporting practices for matches. I know there's been a lot of debate in this field about individualization, and do you have just a word or two you could say about how you report matches?
So we report as identifications.
Yeah.
Follow the rules between ANAB and our current procedures. In essence, indicating if we have an identification to an individual, we will report that as the evidence identifying to that individual.
So it's reported as a certain match.
Yeah,
Is that
if she wants a
ANAB?
briefing from DCJS, we can do that separately. That has nothing to do with the item that we're talking
with
about.
this vote, Erin.
I'm
That has
sorry, I
nothing to
can't.
do with this.
Well,
If you want a briefing from DCJS, we can do that separately. It has nothing to do with the matter that's before us right now.
I thought we were voting whether to agree with the accreditation recommendation.
Right, it has nothing to do with the question that you just asked her.
Are we bound by ANAB's assessment?
We don't have any other assessment mechanism other than reviewing the information that we have been provided, and
Yeah, but we can do a
The-
deep dive on the unit.
we
anytime you
could,
want.
but by the regs that we have standing at the moment, the commission has accepted ANAB as their external accrediting body to provide documentation regarding.
Okay, I understand that. I have concerns about individualization in this field. And since I just have a one-page thing that says ANAB, approves. So I don't have a particular objection to this laboratory, but I am concerned about the practice of individualization, which I don't think is scientifically supported, but we can move forward.
I think that would be.
It's a Fry hearing. It's a
Yeah.
matter for court, not the Forensic Science Commission.
Right.
It's a matter for whether a laboratory is doing accredited work or not. I mean, if the work is not compliant with the recommendation of major
if you're-
commissions,
If
that
If the
is,
science is done properly and your preference is to have the analyst say, that fingerprint may have come from Luigi Mangione, that's fine. That's for a court to decide, not us.
I disagree also. If we're being asked to approve this lab to continue working, but there's serious scientific questions about the reliability of that work, that's absolutely in our purview.
Not talking about the reliability of scientific work.
But-
This question has to do with the verbiage used by the analyst. That fingerprint came from that person, to the exclusion of all others.
That is about reliability and how results are conveyed. I think that's squarely in our purview.
But that's not what we're voting
I
on.
disagree.
So what we're voting on is simply
The
a
NAB.
recognition that ANAB has said, yes, we're accrediting, which almost raises the question why we're voting at all. If all we're doing is deferring to ANAB. I think,
We're not
We're not deferring.
You have the report. There might be errors in the report. You may not be satisfied with the extent of the report, but the language verbiage used by the analyst, same with DNA, same with ballistics, same with tool mark identification, same with fingerprints. That's between, you're going to object if a firearms examiner in court says that bullet that was found in the head of the deceased came from the defendant's gun to the exclusion of all others. You're going to fight that in court. You may win, you may lose, depending on the judge. You may have already had a Fry hearing about it. But the question is, was the analyst properly trained? Did he or she look at the striations on the bullet? Was it proper photography done? Was a comparison microscope used? Was everything up to snuff in that regard? Later on, the verbiage, that's not us.
Can I
so-
make a recommendation?
Okay, go ahead.
This topic probably falls into the realm of NICLAC and the report standardization document, which they asked the labs to all come together, draft. And historically, NICLAC had provided updates regarding that to this body. It's been quite a while, and they are doing an update. Is this something that could be explored on that? So, an business item at a future meeting, but if you have questions regarding specific reporting, I think it falls in that bucket. And we could do that in that time when the document's done and reviewed. It's been a decade plus since that document's been reviewed and talked about at this level. And it was talked about at this level when it was first created. So that could be a place to do this,
Yeah, I
but not at this accreditation voting opportunity.
Right.
And we're happy to do a deep dive on DCJS anytime the commission wants us to do that.
And just to follow, I appreciate you saying that, Shelley, because I wanted to speak up and say the same thing, that the technical working groups are considering the report standardization document for updates and appropriateness at this time. So once that document is complete, it will be provided on DCJS's website, and that's something that certainly if a commission member wanted to discuss, we could make them available, or we could discuss it at that time.
And the labs are watching, just, not just the people in this room who are present, but the labs are watching and listening to these conversations and these objections. And I believe that we're trying our best to respond to the concerns that, and especially this was, I think, also raised by you in part at the last commission meeting. So we're listening, and we are actively working to revise our report writing to better / clearly give supportive language to the conclusions that are being reported.
I
So,
appreciate that,
okay.
Lydia. And I also just want to clarify, reporting is a critical part of the process of communicating results. But the concept of individualization is a scientific question. It's not just what words you're choosing. I'm so connected, but that is a scientific question.
So in as far as, going back to what Erin was talking about, well, do we have to take what ANAB says?
Yeah.
I don't know whether you've seen Erin, the standards that the labs are assessed by during the accreditation. So I don't remember the exact wording, but we have to meet the standard. And if the accrediting body did not feel that whatever documentation we provided to them did not meet the standard, that's when you see the non-conforming work information that you can do a deeper dive into during these sorts of meetings. But when there are no findings, that means that the assessors who go to the laboratory have felt that determined that the laboratory met the requirements in their document. So certainly, I think right when I started on this commission, we had looked at different accrediting bodies, and there has been discussion during my NICLAC about maybe looking at other accrediting bodies. So it's, we're all, I think, interested in getting the best information and giving the best information and being transparent. So just wanted to say that.
And to end on a high note, the good news is that fingerprints is
Love you.
now an accredited discipline, thanks to Kathy Corrado, who was a member of this commission.
True.
I mean, years ago, you'd have, some guy goes to an FBI course for a couple of weeks and he's a fingerprint expert. 6 points, 10 points, 12, he doesn't know. So I understand the concern, but I just wanted to point that out, that it's a good thing that we're accrediting fingerprint
Sure.
discipline now.
I appreciate all that, agree with all of that. I think for me personally, I do not think that individualization has been scientifically proven here. And I don't even know that there is another accreditor who would look more rigorously at that question. And I don't feel prepared to validate a practice that I don't think is supported. And this is not, I want to be crystal clear, it's not a critique of this lab. I suppose if anything, it's a critique of ANAB, but in the absence of a regulator who is, in my opinion, better tracking the state of science, it's hard for me to approve that. And this has been an issue, as everyone knows. In 2009, that first report from the NAS came out. The FBI undertook its massive review in a number of cases. This is not a new issue. It's a longstanding issue. And I would hope that the accreditor would adjust their standards. And I don't have their standards because it wasn't included in the packet. But if the lab is individualizing and that is compliant with the standard, I have concerns.
I would really say, though, that it would be difficult, and I would actually state unfair to hold a vote about accreditation of the lab, and that there be a question about that because there is dissatisfaction with the accrediting body. The lab has to go with the accrediting body that's approved by us. So it's then to say, well, we don't like the way something is done with the way the accrediting body sets up the standards or what have you. There might be an individual thing, but it would be, I don't know how we would be able to function. It's state law that we have to be accredited, so we got to do something. And yes, again, like I said, we're looking at things and we're hearing what everybody's saying, but right now we got to vote on this. And I would just respectfully say that it wouldn't be fair to the laboratory to maybe vote against accreditation for any laboratory because of some disagreement with the way the accrediting body directs us to proceed.
I agree.
I think there's been good conversation that we will take into consideration, work with NICLAC to get the information regarding your concerns, Aaron, and see what the status in New York State. And aside from that, is there a motion on the table then to accredit this particular lab, the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services Latent Print Laboratory?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I would like
Any
to
abstentions?
abstain. Yeah, sorry, abstain.
Abstain.
2 abstentions. Okay, thank you. The motion, with that vote, the motion carries. Up next is the Onondaga County Center for Forensic Sciences Laboratory. They are also looking for a vote here. In September, the laboratory underwent a full ANAB reassessment, and there were no findings. There was one opportunity for improvement, which is a suggestion. The assessment team felt that the lab would benefit from standardizing the process for establishing a time frame for completion of each corrective action. It should be noted that the recommendations such as these require no action. ANAB has issued a renewal of accreditation. The DNA subcommittee has reviewed the documentation and has issued a binding recommendation to approve the renewal of New York State accreditation in the discipline of biology. Are there any questions for the laboratory regarding this accreditation?
Can we inquire whether or not they took that corrective action?
There was no corrective.
Wasn't a
action.
corrective.
It's not a corrective
Suggestion.
action, a suggestion for improvement, right?
Can we find Renee?
Renee, you should be able to turn your camera on.
Topic of the meeting.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
May I just inquire whether or not the opportunity for improvement suggestion was followed with respect to the laboratory benefiting from standardizing the process for establishing a time frame for completion of each corrective action?
Absolutely.
You followed up on that and you established that, is what you're saying? Yes?
We have always had a time frame for completing corrective actions. The recommendation was that we standardize how we did it. And so that is something that we are going to be doing.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there a motion to accept the binding recommendation of the DNA subcommittee and to issue a full renewal of the New York State accreditation to the Onondaga County Center for Forensic Sciences Laboratory concurrent with their ANAB accreditation? Motion. Second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And any abstentions?
I know this is a paperwork issue, but I am in favor of, well, I want to abstain from from the pattern matching disciplines, from the firearms, tool marks, and friction ridge disciplines. Sorry, I don't know how you record that.
How do we?
You can abstain on this one and the next one, but you can't just abstain in a category.
Yeah, I think it has to be a whole. I don't think we can do it in parts.
Well, the motion was combined. So if you want to separate the motion, to accredit us to the biology department, I mean, that's binding. I would go along with it anyway, but I go along with that. I don't think I have a right to not go along with it, right? So however you want to record it administratively, that is my vote.
I'm not sure that we can separate out scope items when we've.
It's a binding recommendation from the DNA subcommittee. The motion is on accepting that binding recommendation. So I don't think we can parse out the recommendation.
Oppose or
You
abstain?
could say I am abstaining because of, but you abstain across the board on the binding recommendation.
But isn't the binding recommendation from the DNA subcommittee only as regards the accreditation of the biology department? Are they also giving a binding recommendation about fire debris, for instance?
No, but we also don't parse out any discipline other than biology because there is a subcommittee overseeing DNA.
Okay, I guess if it's easier just to say I abstain, but just for the record, I have no objection to the non-pattern disciplines.
You know what, this seems to me to be the same issue as with Onondaga. I changed my vote to abstain
On the Onondaga, on this one?
on this one as well. Yep.
Two abstentions.
So 2 abstentions and the motion carries. Okay, up next is the Westchester County Department of Labs and Research, Division of Forensic Sciences, and this is also a voting item. In June, the laboratory underwent a full A&AB reassessment activity, and there were 5 findings. However, the laboratory challenged 1 finding and the nonconformity was removed. The laboratory remediated the remaining 4 findings. The challenge and remediation documentation were provided and reviewed at the September meeting. A&AB has issued a renewal of accreditation. The DNA subcommittee has reviewed the documentation and also issued a binding recommendation to approve the renewal of New York State accreditation in the discipline of biology. Questions for the laboratory regarding this assessment? Hearing none, is there a motion to accept the binding recommendation of the DNA subcommittee and to issue full renewal of the New York State accreditation to the Westchester County Department of Laboratories and Research, Division of Forensic Science, concurrent with its A&AB accreditation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And any abstentions?
I abstain.
I abstain.
I abstain, same issue as before.
3 abstentions.
All right. Westchester County Department of Labs and Research, Division of Forensic Toxicology. This is an informational update. No vote is required. The laboratory has submitted a request for a scope change to remove infrared spectroscopy, as the lab does not utilize that technology. The updated scope was sent by A&AB. Are there any questions for the lab regarding that scope change? Okay,
No
hearing
vote.
none. Yep, no vote. We move on to old business.
Ms. Palmer, would you please provide an update regarding the familial search program?
Yes, I just pull up the numbers here. There have been some updates. Yes. Since the September meeting, there have been an additional 5 applications received, and these are all initial submission applications. And there are 6 applications have been approved and added to the search queue. So 66 applications in total, 50 initial, 8 renewals, and 8 resubmissions, with 48 approved, 3 withdrawn, 13 rejected, and 2 are still in the review process. Of the 48 approved, 10 are in the search queue, with 38 searches completed, 27 with no releasable results, 11 with results released, 6 ongoing investigations, 5 investigations closed. Our update on familial search.
Okay. Any questions? We're moving on to the NIST interagency report.
Yes. At the November DNA subcommittee meeting, there was a representative from the Biology Technical Working Group present for additional discussion regarding the NIST interagency report. The Technical Working Group discussed the recommendations, noting that they are similar to other published documents and that they are only recommendations, not standards. They also discussed that some labs are already meeting some of these recommendations and that each lab is considering which of the recommendations they would adopt. If there's any discussion, we also have the co-chair of the BioTwig here today. Jessica.
Yeah. I just think I did review and watch the DNA subcommittee meeting of the last couple of times. And as it stands as a commissioner, I'm just very unclear about what the DNA subcommittee's position is and what BioTwig's position is with respect to the human factors report. And I can address this with BioTwig like a representative, but I think it would be useful if because we've heard now for a couple meetings that exactly what you summarized perfectly, I think, Shelley, which is BioTwig has reviewed the report, does agree with some of the recommendations that I believe many labs are already following many of the recommendations. As a commission, I think we should know that, right? Our task is to ensure that labs are following best practices. We're here to help bolster quality. So we have this important report, and we have BioTwig saying that they're meeting, many labs are meeting these recommendations. Let's know which are you meeting, which aren't you meeting, which do you disagree with, maybe, right? We've also heard that some of the recommendations conflict with one another, but I've never heard what those are. So I think it would be helpful to get a memo or some kind of report. Doesn't even have to be lengthy, but just so we know what BioTwig actually did, was it just the recommendations at the very end of the report? And what is the status of what labs are doing with respect to these recommendations? And if they're not being followed, why?
Is there an action specific back to like the subcommittee then, asking them to get a report? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, what do people think? Would it be, should we kick it back to the subcommittee or should we kick it directly to BioTwig to ask them for a report? Or does it have to go through the DNA subcommittee? I was worried about timing. We're now just stretching into infinity with this. I'm sorry about
Probably
that.
has to go through the subcommittee, right?
I agree. I think it does have to go through the subcommittee.
Okay. So we would direct, if the vote passes, the subcommittee to request from BioTwig a formalized, memo or report
Or even-
stating what they reviewed.
I would even be okay with the subcommittee providing us with a report or something with the BioTwig as their
Source.
a source that
Yeah,
they
yeah,
consider.
yeah.
But I really think, I mean, they're our DNA subcommittee, right?
Right.
They're our
Twigs did a good job with this.
liaison for
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So
fair enough.
I think
Yeah.
it should come from them, not from
Yeah.
BioTwig directly.
Okay, that's fine.
So do you have a motion to request the DNA subcommittee to provide a report out?
Yes, I make a motion to request the DNA subcommittee to provide the commission with a report concerning the NIST Human Factors Report, what was reviewed, what recommendations, well, do I have to continue or? Maybe we could, maybe the commission could provide a list of questions that we want the DNA subcommittee to answer in the report.
Can I
But
hear that
in
list?
general, we want them to address the human factors part of it.
Yeah.
Like a position paper on the human factors. Is that what?
Beautiful.
From Albany. It's been a very long time, I don't remember when, that the commission actually met with the DNA subcommittee so that we could have a discussion about the role of the subcommittee. I mean, I know that it's established in statute and rule in it, but it might be beneficial to have a joint meeting at some time in the foreseeable future. In addition to asking them for an updated report on their current policies and process.
We did have some discussions about that a while ago, didn't we, Shelley?
You think?
Yes, I believe. I just was asking if that's a second to Jessica's motion with a slight amendment. Is that I heard from you?
Different action.
Okay,
Yeah, separate, right.
okay. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table to request from the DNA subcommittee a position statement on that NIST document. And we'll work to look at scheduling a co-meeting.
Does it need a vote?
Yes. And so do I have a vote for that motion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Next up is is a complaint. We've had an ongoing complaint with the New York State Crime Lab providing some closeout material at the request of the commission from the June meeting regarding the review of firearms casework and testimony. Following the review, no discrepancies were detected and reviewers agreed with the conclusions reached by the firearm examiner. I think this was just a report out to finalize what the commission had asked for. The lab is present in Albany if there's any follow-up on this. Okay.
Now we're gonna move to laboratory disclosures.
All right. It is very chilly in here, yes.
It's getting colder.
It's getting colder.
I did ask for them to turn it up.
Jessica
after
just said it's
Okay.
colder than a DA's heart in here.
Our first laboratory with disclosure is the Erie County Central Police Services Forensic Laboratory. There are 3 separate items here. The first one is the initial notification and an A&AV acknowledgement of missing evidence items detected during an inventory of the vault during the 2024 internal audit. The lab is currently investigating this issue. The second item is the notification closeout and A&AV acknowledgement of an unexpected saliva PT result. The lab investigated and updated their procedures on face mask requirements in the DNA section. The analyst will also have the results verified by a supervisor. No cases were affected as the analyst had not performed saliva screening since their last successful PT completion, and the lab considers the matter closed. The final item is the notification and A&AV acknowledgement of an unexpected fire debris PT result. Both analysts who performed this PT followed laboratory procedure, and during the investigation it was determined that the lab would benefit from purchasing a wider variety of reference ignitable liquids to run and add to their in-house reference collection. So we do have people available to speak to all 3 of these items. If there are questions.
I have a question.
Okay. Michelle, do you want us to have anybody join you?
If you could have Maria and Tom jump in, that would be good. They're the best for the bio questions.
Okay.
Sorry, thanks. I just had questions with the lost evidence investigation, because that was filed 2 months ago. I just was wondering what has been done or investigation so far.
We are currently still working on our root cause. There was an analyst involved that was out on a long-term leave that needed to be interviewed, and they just came back to the office last week. We're also looking through our destruction procedures and our inventory procedures. So everything is still just in progress.
Okay.
Any other questions for the laboratory? Okay, hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
The Erie County Medical Examiner's Office, oh, did you have a question?
Sorry, there are 2 areas here. We're still on the, this is the PT failure on the saliva as well? Yes, I do have questions. I apologize.
Can we get Maria and Tom
Blood
back?
at your ears.
Sorry. There are quite a few Erie documents.
They were just celebrating.
I know. Welcome back.
There they are.
Thank you.
Hi, sorry, just when you thought. I had some questions about the false positive on the proficiency test for saliva. And I just want to make sure I understand it. So the expected result for 2 samples in the proficiency test should be negative for saliva, but an analyst reported positive on 2 items, items 3 and 4 on the proficiency test using the RSID method. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And as part of your root cause investigation, there were many components, I think rightly to that. But one was you looked to see if there was any foreign DNA profile thing had proceeded on those items, and you found nothing, no unexpected DNA profile that might have belonged to the contaminant bodily fluid. Is that right? Now, can I just ask you why that would be, why you could have a positive for saliva, but not a corresponding DNA profile? Does that have to do with the relative sensitivities of the testing? Could you just speak on how that's possible?
It could do with the sensitivity of the testing, but in this case, a proficiency sample is a stain placed on a small piece of fabric, and the analyst cut a small piece for the saliva testing, and then she consumed that, and then she took a second piece for her DNA testing. So it wasn't the same one. So we know that she did not contaminate the piece of evidence itself, just the sample that was tested for the saliva testing.
The little cutting that went on to RSID saliva testing, is that what you mean? Yeah. And it was two different, it was items 3 and 4. So what does that actually look at like in the proficiency test? Are they right next to each other? Are they completely packaged separately? Like, could you just describe how the evidence presents?
They are completely packaged separately in separate envelopes.
So 2 separate pieces of cuttings were contaminated, not just the one? Okay. Could you just describe the root cause with respect to, because it did seem like you identified a number of laboratory practices that could be improved upon that might have caused potential contamination with saliva. So for instance, the analyst, I believe, and please correct me, right, did report wearing a mask while doing the actual work, but it happens that sometimes people walk through the laboratory and start talking and they're not masked. So I believe one of your corrective actions was to institute a policy that everyone going through, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but everyone going through the lab work area would be required to wear a mask to reduce the possibility of contamination. Is that right?
Yeah.
And what were the other, I know there were a couple others maybe involving a scalpel, but could you describe the other recommendations that you made? And then I have a follow-up question that if you're instituting rightly, I think these lab practices, why you only looked at the work of this one particular analyst rather than check the work of other analysts if there were, lab